And welcome back to EDH Deck Building. I am your host, Demo, and we got a new set for the Commander format, but obviously the game of Magic. It is Duskmourn. I haven't talked about it at all. I will just be talking about it in this review, and that's it. And if you're a huge fan of this set, I don't know if you're going to be a huge fan of my review. I would say my thoughts on this set are more negative than positive. I don't love it myself. It's all subjective, right, guys? It's up to you what you like and what you don't like. As I usually do, I will go over exactly why certain things I like or don't like. There are some things I like, and unlike the Bloomborough review where I did the negative stuff first and then talked about the positive stuff for like 40 minutes and everyone was downvoting that video because they like Bloomborough, here I'm going to do it in reverse. I'm going to talk about the good stuff first and then get into the bad stuff. So if you guys really like this set, you can just skip over the last half of this video. Let's get to the good stuff first. I'm going to start out with a few commanders here that are pretty neat. Valgavoth, Harrow of Souls, 2 black and a red Elder Demon 4/4 flying ward, pay 2 life. Whenever an opponent loses life for the first time during each of their turns, put a +1/+1 counter on Valgavoth, Harrow of Souls, and draw a card. And yes, that will work with the ward, right? So if somebody tries to swords your commander, they will have to pay the 2 life in order for it not to be countered. Your commander's ability will trigger, assuming it's the first time that they've done it that turn. You will put a counter on this guy, draw a card, and then you'll get it exiled. Obviously, it's not going to save it. You'll end up gaining an extra life, though, because it will be a bigger power. So this is, I don't think, the most interesting commander ever. I think it's going to be a popular one, though. Whenever an opponent loses life for the first time during each of their turns, that's a commander that you don't even have to build around. Someone just cracks their fetch land. You get to put a counter on your commander and draw a card. That seems amazing, right? And again, I would do this just like I do with my Danik deck, where I have that situation ready. I have that creature I want to sacrifice or something in order to get my commander's trigger. And I go to the end step, and if a creature has not gone to the graveyard that turn, then I sacrifice my creature to get the trigger off my commander. Boy, does this guy make Danik look sorry in comparison, right? So this guy, you're going to do the same thing, or at least that's what I would do, where, I mean, yeah, you could put in effects so that just your opponents just take a damage on their upkeep or something, right? Just a lot of really easy effects that you could put in these colors where people are just losing 1 life on their upkeep, taking 1 damage on their upkeep, because of course damage causes loss of life. But you could also just have that effect, whatever, grape shot or something, right? Your opponent goes to their end step. If they have cracked a fetch land and lost a life, then you'll get the trigger, and you can save the grape shot for another day. The next opponent's turn, you get to the end step and you haven't gotten the trigger off your commander. You smack them for 1 damage just so you get this trigger off your commander, right? So really easy build around, huge payoff. This card could go in the 99 of a ton of decks as well. I think it's going to be a popular one. We got another Valgavoth, Terror Eater. I don't know. Have they ever done this before? I don't know if I've ever seen the same commander. I mean, it's the same guy, right? Isn't it? So kind of weird that they have the same commander. I'm sure there's some storyline reason for that. So 6 black, Elder Demon 9/9, and I'm bringing this one up for a very particular reason. It is a very interesting commander, but also I've said multiple times over the last about year or so that I don't think they're ever going to print a commander ever again that costs like more than 7 mana and doesn't have some sort of cost reduction. And one of my patrons called me out on the Discord, hey, how about this one? That's right. They actually printed a 9 mana creature that doesn't have any sort of cost reduction. You actually got to pay the 9 mana here, but it's probably worth it. So a 9/9 flying lifelink, that alone, pretty darn good. Ward sacrifice 3 non-land permanents. Oh boy. So in order to target this guy with anything, you have to sacrifice 3 non-land permanents. You can't even sacrifice lands. If a card you didn't control would be put into an opponent's graveyard from anywhere, exile it instead. That's a pretty fantastic ability, right? So hoses a lot of strategies right out of the gate. Any card you didn't control, put into an opponent's graveyard. Any dying effect is obviously going to get exiled instead. So it's gonna get rid of your opponent's dice triggers, but it won't be yours because of course it's a card you didn't control. So if your creatures die, you're still gonna get dice triggers. So that's important. During your turn, you may play cards exiled with Valgavoth. If you cast a spell this way, pay life equal to its mana value rather than pay its mana cost. Oh boy. I had one patron in particular getting pretty excited about this guy on the Discord. I will just say, I will warn you, okay? This to me has a very Turgid-esque feel where I'm not only is it super powerful, but it's also going to be doing a whole lot of things my opponents are really going to hate. I mean, clearly it's a removal magnet. Okay, that's the other thing. It's going to be a card that everyone's going to hate to see. It's powerful and also going to be doing things that people hate. So that you got a double whammy against you already. It's a triple whammy though, because this is a 9-mana commander that's going to take you forever to get out. And I know people say, okay, well, the ward's fantastic. Sure, but you're going to cast this guy. I mean, I'm going to save my board wipe. That's what I'm going to do, because you're going to cast this guy and likely you won't be using his ability. Probably won't do a whole lot until the following turn. I mean, I'll just warn you. That's all. I'm just warning. This is a commander that people are not going to love to see on the table. It's going to be a target. It's also super expensive. It's got a lot going against it. Just saying. Nico Light of Hope is probably my favorite from the set. I think the most interesting build around for sure. 2 white and a blue human wizard 3/4. When it enters the battlefield, create 2 shard tokens. And that's actually not new. We have seen that before. They're enchantments with pay 2, sacrifice this enchantment, scry 1, then draw a card, but you are not going to want to sacrifice these enchantments. You're going to want to keep them around for the second ability. Pay 2 and tap, exile target non-legendary creature you control, so obviously it can't be your commander. Shards you control become copies of it until the beginning of the next end step. Return it to the battlefield and owner's control at the beginning of the next end step. What an interesting ability. That ability is just doing so much. So obviously you have those 2 shards. You can have those 2 shards become a copy of a creature that you're going to exile. The interesting thing here is you're kind of doing a blinking strategy, and you probably would want creatures that you can blink and that will come back into play, like a sad robot. You blink it, your shards will become copies of them, and I guess you could sacrifice them to draw a card and then you get another card draw. Or no, they're not going to be those copies of it until, yeah, so you're not going to be able to sacrifice them because that ability will be gone. They will be turned into that creature. The sad robot comes back, and obviously you get to go grab a land. So putting blinkable creatures in the deck is important. Of course, turning your shards into sad robots, what's that going to do, right? Again, I just figured out that it's even worse than I originally thought. You're just gonna have 2/2 creatures that you can attack with. That's not very good, right? So what you want, I think the best course of action here is creatures that are both blinkable and have the essentially the Sun Titan effect, right? So a Sun Titan in this deck, I mean, it's already a good card in a commander game. You'll blink it, your 2 shards will become Sun Titans. Pretty fantastic. You attack with both of them, right? So you get the attack trigger. That's the situation where I think you're gonna get the best of both worlds. I can attack with my shards, which are now Sun Titans, get the attack trigger. Then my original Sun Titan comes back and I get the ETB. So creatures with both and I've been doing that a ton lately. Creatures with both an ETB and an attack trigger, I think, will work particularly well in this strategy. We do have, just so you know, Nico Aris. It was the original Nico. It was a planeswalker, and when it enters the battlefield, you create X shard tokens. So there is other ways to create shards as well. It also has an ability where it creates a shard token. So that would be the one card where I think it's probably a slam dunk, all the way back from Kaldheim, eh? And they're coming back to it here. You always want to go down the rabbit hole and find if there's other ways to do that kind of stuff. So a lot of really neat things you can do. This commander is doing a whole lot of really interesting things. The Mind Render is a really unique one that I'm sure is getting some buzz. So blue, legendary enchantment creature Nightmare. And when I first saw this card, I didn't even realize it was a commander. It's a 10/1, so a 3-mana 10/1. And then also, it can't be blocked. A 10/1 unblockable creature, that's insane. However, if a source you control would deal damage to an opponent, prevent that damage and each opponent mills that many cards. Whew. And is this better than Bruvak as a mono blue milling commander? Maybe. I mean, this guy's 3 mana, so I can get him out. Let's say I get him out turn 3. Turn 4, I swing with him. He can't be blocked, so obviously he's would be getting in for 10 damage, but of course that's a replacement effect there that is going to make all my opponents mill for 10. So this is hitting all opponents at the same time, which is why it's, man. And a lot of those milling effects typically just go after one player. So the fact that I can just attack with my command, this is essentially an automatic mill my opponents for 10 every turn, right? Which is pretty good. Again, is it better than Bruvak? I don't know. They certainly have, man, they really are trying to make the milling strategy more viable in, I think, in the game of Magic in general. Do people play it in other formats? I don't know. It is certainly way more viable than it used to be in the format of Commander. I think an interesting way to go with this guy is maybe just do a Powers Matter thing. Like, you have a 10 power commander that only costs 3 mana. So you could kind of do, I mean, I don't know how many options there are here, but you could kind of do a Powers Matter thing a little bit. Like, I wonder if there's like a greater good type of effect. In blue, you don't really have a lot of those effects, but creatures dealing damage equal to their power might be good. Although, again, your commander is end up milling there, right? So I'll give you a perfect card for this deck, though. Dragon Throne of Tarkir, is it called? That's a card that I think likely is a slam dunk in this deck because you put it on your commander and then you give your whole team +10/+0, right? So probably just end up winning the game there, right? I mean, depending on how many creatures you have, obviously. But that would be one thing that might not be super obvious that you could go with this deck is look at stuff where it cares about the power of the creature, because obviously your commander is only a 3-mana creature with a 10 power, which is ridiculous, obviously, right? All right, let's move on to some 99 cards. And of course, there's going to be, as there always is with every set, the slam dunks that are just going to be commander staples right out of the gate. I think Untimely Malfunction will be one of those. 1 in a red, instant. Choose one. Destroy target artifact. Change the target of target spell or ability with a single target. 1 or 2 target creatures can't block this turn. First, I'll say that wording there is weird, isn't it? 1 or 2 target creatures can't block this turn. Usually they say up to 2 target creatures can't block this turn, so that's kind of interesting. I just made a video that is maybe one of my most downvoted videos ever. People really didn't get what I was trying to... I mean, I guess I was a little confusing in what I was saying there, but I talked about modal cards and how they can be, like, they're really going down the road of modal cards that do a whole bunch of things that you want to do in a commander game because they know commander players are going to want to put them in their decks. And I'm just saying, be careful there, okay? You're likely putting worse versions of removal, worse versions of counterspells in your deck. And if you just keep on doing that and keep on doing that and keep on doing that, every counterspell in your deck is going to cost 3 mana. Every creature removal spell in your deck is going to cost 3 mana. Every protection card in your deck is going to cost 3 mana, right? You're making your deck worse. You got to be careful. I know versatility is nice, but you got to be careful. This one I think is good. And the reason why, like the ones I like are the ones where there's one mode that you will likely be using, and that mode is actually a good rate. 2 mana destroy an artifact is terrible, of course. Why would you put that in your deck? You wouldn't. The fact that this destroys an artifact is just an added bonus. 2 mana, make 2 creatures not be able to block. I don't know if you're ever going to use that. It's a possible scenario, but that is certainly going to be at the bottom of the list. The one you're going to use the most here is change the target of target spell or ability with a single target. That is a very usable effect and a very popular effect, especially in mono red decks. In the commander format, can be a real blowout sometimes. Not only am I protecting my stuff, but I'm going to get one of my opponent's things off the board. I particularly like this in a mono red deck with removing enchantments, where my opponent is casting their Nature's Claim on my enchantment. And not only am I saving my enchantment for 2 mana, but I'm also getting their Smothering Tithe off the table. That's incredible value. So that's the mode you're going to be using the most, right? Again, people probably think I'm being conflicting in my opinion here. I mean, it's a swerve, right? That's a swerve. A swerve is 2 mana. So that's the mode on here you're going to be using the most for sure. And it's a good rate. 1 in a red to do that swerve effect is a good rate. So everything else on here, I mean, this is essentially power creep, this card. Everything else on here is just added bonus. 90% of the time, this is going to be 2 mana, change the target to target spell or ability with a single target. That's great. I can also destroy my opponent's Akroma's Memorial if, you know, that a situation arises, or maybe I just want to get for damage with my huge commander and knock a guy out, and I make their only blockers not be able to block. You know, again, those modes are, you know, once in a blue moon. This is just a good rate for change the target to target spell or ability with a single target. And in any deck, that's good. Sawblade Skin Ripper, 1 black, red, human assassin, 3/2. I will point out this is an assassin, and we got a whole bunch of assassin tribal stuff from Assassin's Creed, so keep that in mind. Has menace. Pay 2, sacrifice another creature, or enchantment. It's interesting to put enchantment on there. Put a +1/+1 counter on Sawblade Skin Ripper. Don't really care about that. We care about this last ability, though, at the beginning of your end step. If you sacrificed 1 or more permanents this turn, Sawblade Skin Ripper deals that much damage to any target. That's incredible, right? Obviously, that goes in all those Rakdos sacrifice decks. There's a bunch of those. It also goes in the treasure token themes, because this is if you sacrifice 1 or more permanents this turn. Mahadi, is that the black-red guy that makes treasure tokens? I guess, though, they're both end-step triggers, so you might have to be careful there. Nevertheless, I sacrifice 7 treasure tokens, right? Dockside Extortionist comes down, I sacrifice all those treasure tokens to cast a bunch of stuff, and then on my end step, I deal 7 damage to any target. Pretty great, right? So great 99 card for a lot of decks. Flood Pit's Drowner is an interesting one. 1 in a blue. Merfolk 2/1 Flash Vigilance. Really interesting combination of abilities there. Seeing Vigilance on a fish is A little weird. When Flood Pit's Drowner enters, tap target creature an opponent controls and put a stun counter on it. So instant speed, my opponent is going to, whether or not they admit it or not, this is why you don't tell people who you're attacking. You just declare attackers on your declare attacker step and wait for them to respond after the fact. If you know they're going to attack you with a Blightsteel Colossus, flash this in and tap it down before they can and put a stun counter on it so they can attack the following turn as well. However, the really interesting part about this card, 1 in a blue and tap, shuffle Flood Pit's Drowner and target creature with a stun counter on it into their owner's library. So of course, now on my turn, I don't have to wait for them to untap it. I just shuffle it into their library and maybe I'll get this guy back and I can use him again. I looked up, and very specific reason I'm mentioning this, there actually is a few commanders that are dealing with stun counters. I think there's 3 blue commanders dealing with stun counters. Automatic 99 card for you right here, because of course, I can choose a different creature. I can flash this in, put a stun counter on something else, but then some other creature that already had a stun counter on it from my commander, I can then use this to shuffle that into your library, right? So obviously a 99 card for those decks. Moving along, Overlord of the Hauntwoods, and I'm getting into some new mechanics from this set. 3 green, enchantment creature, avatar horror, 6/5, has impending 4. 1 green. If you cast this spell for its impending cost, very similar to Bestow, I'll just say, it enters with 4 time counters on it and isn't a creature until the last one is removed. At the beginning of your end step, remove a time counter from it. And I will just point out, time counters, very popular in the game of Magic. Lots of things dealing with time counters, lots of mechanics that deal with time counters. The Doctor Who set very much dealt with time counters, so keep that in mind as well. So this will enter as just an enchantment. It won't be a creature, obviously. I pay 3 mana, I get an enchantment. And I get this ability. Whenever an Overlord of the Hauntwoods enters or attacks, create a tapped colorless land token named everywhere. That is every basic land type. So I think this probably is the one that is going to see the most play. It is a very unique ability that can fit in a lot of different decks for a lot of different reasons. I'll just say 3 mana. Okay, if we get away from all the other things that are going on here, this is 3 mana. Put a command tower in play, essentially, right? Because it is a colorless land token that has every basic land type. So this is 3 mana and it is 2 green. So it might be a little tough to put this in your 5 color decks. And that's why I'm giving this one a mention and why I think it's going to see the most play out of all of them. This is 3 mana, make a land that produces every color of mana. That's pretty good. That's a pretty good rate. And then after 4 turns, I can start attacking with it and creating more of those. It's creating tokens that could be relevant for a lot of decks. It also is very relevant if you just want the basic land types for whatever reason, right? There's lots of decks that are wanting, maybe you have a domain deck. Funny enough, there are commanders in green. There's a couple of them that came out, I think, at Dominaria United, that are looking for the basic land types thing that have a domain ability. So there you go. If you have one of those underwhelming commanders, here's another one for you that can give you all those basic land types you're looking for. The impending ability is kind of neat. It's an enchantment. You obviously can just cast this as a creature if you want to, but having it as an enchantment for a while, it can be beneficial. Obviously, it's harder to get off the battlefield because it's not a creature. Then it eventually turns into a creature. It's a pretty neat idea, I think. And this one, I think, is probably the one that's going to see the most play. Unwanted Remake. 1 white mana instant. Destroy target creature. Its controller manifests Dread. And this is another new ability from this set, although it's one that I don't particularly love. Again, a little bit of a cop-out here. I mean, we're just doing manifest. They're just doing it slightly differently. And we already did the cloaking thing, which is another sort of copy of manifest ability. We already did that this year, so now they're doing manifest again. And this is kind of the thing. And I know I said I wouldn't get to the negative stuff till later, but this is the thing that kind of bugs me when I did my video about Mystery Booster 2, and I'm like, look at all these crazy, awesome, unique abilities in this set. How come we're not getting any of that? Instead, we just get another manifest ability. Don't love it. What does it do? Well, that player looks at the top 2 cards of their library, then puts one onto the battlefield face down as a 2/2 creature and the other into their graveyard. It's a creature card and can be turned face up anytime. So it's manifest, right? It can be turned up anytime for its mana cost. So it's just a better manifest, essentially. Instead of just doing the top card, you get to look at 2. So it's slightly better. It's slightly better for them, obviously. If you're going to reality shift, which would be obviously a great comparison here, they just put the top card onto the battlefield. Here, they actually get to look, okay, one of them's a land, one's a creature. So I'll put the creature onto the battlefield so I can actually flip it over. Or if there's something they want in their graveyard. So it is obviously slightly better for that person. Again, A little bit of a lazy design in my opinion. Anyway, I'll just say Threshold, which I brought up in Bloomborough. I'm like, it's weird. I like Threshold. It's a weird mechanic to bring back in Bloomborough, though, I thought. This seems like a way better set to bring back Threshold, but they also brought back Delirium in this set, so maybe they didn't want to do both in the same set. Anyway, just my opinion. This is a great removal spell, obviously. 1 mana destroy a creature, and I mean, it's better than Reality Shift. Although Reality Shift is exile, and again, Manifest is not quite as good as Dread for the opponent, obviously, because they get more options. Ultimately, this is, I mean, where does this rank? Swords is better, Path is better? Other than that, though, I mean, it is a destroy. Funny enough, I was just doing a deck doctor for my patron's Shay Cormac deck, and I was like, yeah, Path and Swords aren't great here because you want your opponent's creatures to be dying, right? It's funny when you get into that situation sometimes. Sometimes exiling creatures is not great. Sometimes you want your opponent. Mathis would be another commander where maybe Unwanted Remake is better because it is a destroy effect and you actually want your opponent's creatures to be dying. So that is something to keep in mind for a card like this as well. It certainly will see play in the format. Drag to the Roots. Speaking of those removal spells, and again, black and green certainly don't need it, just like white doesn't need it, but this is a good one. 2 black and a green instant. Here's that Delirium. This spell costs 2 less to cast as long as there are 4 more card types among cards in your graveyard. Destroy target non-land permanent. So 4 mana instant speed, destroy a non-land permanent is pretty good. The fact that this can cost 2 mana is obviously really good. So again, where does this rank? Assassin's Trophy is better. And then where do we go from there? Again, you have so many options there that you're just going to pick the one that maybe fits what you're doing. For me, my Name is One deck is my only black-green deck. Obviously, there's no shortage of removal in that deck. Terra Sunder is one that I definitely am a big fan of. That's an exile. It does have the kicker, so it's going to cost 4 most of the time here. We have a stipulation where it can only cost 2. Yeah. Again, I guess it just depends what you want in your deck. This is certainly a good one, though. Hedge Shredder is definitely a card that's going to see some play in the format. 2 green. Vehicle, 5/5. When it attacks, you may mill 2 cards. And man, they've been really going down the self-mill in green. That's really become a green thing now. Every set we see another green card that is doing the self-mill thing. It also has crew 1, of course, because it is a vehicle. Really easy to crew. But the reason it's going to go in a ton of decks, whenever 1 or more land cards are put into your graveyard from your library, put them onto the battlefield tapped. Oh boy. So how many decks does this go in? I guess it goes in a Sidisi deck because you're self-milling. Again, you're not doing the land strategy in a Sidisi deck, but you are self-milling all the time. And as you're doing that, you're going to be chucking lands in your graveyard. And here they just go onto the battlefield tap. That's amazing, right? Did a Slogurk deck on my channel, you know, when that commander first came out. And what I said there is self-mill works fantastic because your commander is just looking for cards to go in your graveyard from anywhere. And I thought you could just traumatize yourself, right? Traumatize myself. All those lands go in my graveyard, triggers my commander however many times, triggers this as well, right? So this is going to be a slam dunk in a Slogurk deck, obviously. Gitrog deck, all those decks where you're doing that. So this is going to see a ton of play in the format for sure. I mean, crewing it and attacking with it is also a possibility, but you certainly don't need to. Veteran Survivor, I'm going to call my sleeper pick from the set. I think this is a pretty neat card that probably isn't getting a lot of love and also has a sort of new mechanic that, you know, one of the reasons why I wanted to talk about it. 1 white mana Human Survivor 2/1 has the survival mechanic, which again isn't entirely unique, but it is essentially new. It is basically the opposite of inspired, I guess, right? At the beginning of your second main phase, if Veteran Survivor is tapped, exile up to 1 target card from a graveyard. So of course, at the beginning of your second main phase, and they have changed the wording there. I will point out that's a little bit of a rules interaction that people might not be aware of, is they used to call it post-combat main phase. Funny enough, and my patrons were talking about this on the Discord again, how they were changing that rule. And I'm like, I always called it second main phase. I always called it first main phase, second main phase. I never called it post-combat main phase. It is now officially second main phase. So obviously you're going to want to attack with this guy, right? You attack with him. Now he's tapped on your second main phase, and you can exile up to one target card from a graveyard. As long as there are 3 or more cards exiled with Veteran Survivor, gets +3/+3 and is hexproof. So all you have to do is exile 3 cards with this guy, and he's now a 5/4 hexproof creature. Pretty great. The reason I like him is because he is graveyard hate. Every deck needs graveyard hate. Human Tribal could be a good fit as a graveyard hate card, but the big one here is any tapping theme. If you're tapping down your own creatures for whatever reason, I'm sure there's a lot of people out there doing that. You don't have to attack with this guy. You just tap him down with your Springleaf Drum or something, right? You tap him down with some other effect. What's the Outlaws of Thunder Junction commander where you're obviously going to be doing the tapping theme there? Wiley, is it? Or he's a Wiley guy? Or is his name Wiley or is he Wiley? I can't remember. But slam dunk there, right? Just a great graveyard hate card that also turns into a big scary creature. Enduring Curiosity, 2 blue enchantment creature cat Glimmer, which I believe is a new creature type, right? 4/3 with flash. Whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. So we have basically a just power creep version of Coastal Piracy here. This has flash. It's also a 4/3 creature. And also when Enduring Curiosity dies, if it was a creature, return to the battlefield under its owner's control. It's also an enchantment. So you get another kick at the can here. So just a better version of Coastal Piracy, right? Or a better version of by Nathassa, probably, right? Just a better version of a card that already seeing a lot of play in the Commander format. So it's going to see a lot of play. All right, my favorite card from the set. I think it's the best card from the set, likely. I mean, for me, I like removal, right? Split Up. 1 white sorcery. Choose 1, destroy all tapped creatures or destroy all untapped creatures. Wow. A 3-mana board wipe that can possibly be one-sided. I mean, obviously it's not going to get the untapped creatures if you're going after the tapped creatures. Likely this is going after the tapped creatures, but of course you can make it so that you're not, right? I can, put this in my Lulu deck where I can very easily tap down my creatures, right? So I'm looking at the board and I'm seeing, oh, everyone's attacking, so everyone's creatures are tapped, right? I have the, Buddy's playing an Edgar Markov deck, Buddy's playing a Krenko deck, so of course his commander's tapped, all his creatures are probably tapped because he's attacking. I'm just going to, on my first main phase, choose destroy all tapped creatures, and it's essentially a one-sided board wipe. Or now I look around the board and I just see most of my opponent's creatures are untapped because they're not really attacking. Now I can either attack with my creatures, so they're tapped, and then on the second main phase, I now destroy all untapped creatures, and my creature, again, one-sided board wipe, or I'm in my Lulu deck, or the deck I was just talking about with the other guy, where you're tapping down your creatures. It's very easy for me to tap down my creatures. And now I can just cast this and destroy all untapped creatures and save mine again. So I think this is just all around a good board wipe. 3 mana for that. And it's very easy to have a one-sided board wipe. So all around, I just think it's a great board wipe. But also, if you're in the theme where you can tap down your creatures or tap down your opponent's creatures, in any way manipulate that scenario, oh boy, this is just an absolute blowout, right? So slam dunk in those decks. All right, if you love this set, stop the video now, please. I mean, you can continue watching if you want to, but be warned. Warning, warning. There will be some negative review coming up here. Doomsday Excruciator is probably my least favorite card from the set, and, probably a card that a lot of people love. It certainly has gotten a lot of buzz, I'm sure. I just really don't like it for a very obvious reason. So black, 6 black mana. So it does cost 6, and you do have to pay all black. It's a demon, it's a 6/6, and it's got flying. To be expected. When Doomsday Excruciator enters, if it was cast, each player exiles all but the bottom 6 cards of their library face down. At the beginning of your upkeep, draw a card. So I think the idea here was that this upkeep trigger was supposed to be a downside because you run out of cards faster by drawing an extra card. Like that matters. Essentially, you've turned off all of your opponent's card draw, because now drawing cards becomes a downside. I mean, that's one thing about this is all card draw in your deck now becomes a downside because you only have 6 cards left. But the big one is like this card. I know it costs 6 mana, but the game, you just put the game on a 6-turn clock, maximum a 6-turn clock. Like how easy is it to just end the game with this card, right? And maybe you don't win, but I end the game. Everyone just exiled their library. This card's ridiculous. If it was cast, each player exiles basically everyone exiles their entire library. You only have 6 turns left, and then the game is over. So that's the part that I just don't love about it. Someone could just cast this in a commander game and, oh, guess we got like less than 6 turns likely. I mean, this just shuts off all your card draw. I mean, unless you have a Labman WinCon in your deck already, then you're laughing. This shuts off all card draw because all card draw becomes awful. And in fact, it becomes your doom. A Phyrexian Arena is now just, you're just going to die even quicker, right? It becomes even, this basically makes all card draw terrible. It puts the game on a 6-turn clock at best. Just don't love it. I'm shocked they printed this card. When I saw it, I was like, is this for real? I had to read it several times. Again, this is another one of those cards that when it first gets spoiled, you're like, that's not a real card. Someone made that up. It's a fake card someone made up. No, this is a real card, apparently. Don't love it. And my biggest gripe with this set is the aesthetic. I don't love it. Again, there's a lot of people that will. I have patrons that love it. It is, the horror theme. And so if you're a big fan of horror movies, you love it. I got some patrons that are super excited for this set for that reason. And again, we don't all have to love it, right? We don't all have to love the aesthetic of this set. But I'll just say, and as I've been saying a lot lately, we're really getting into the territory now where every set is like a Universes Beyond set. Again, for all you guys that don't like Universes Beyond, I hope you don't like this set. We got some cards here that are just like, okay, this just looks like a Universes Beyond card. The Roller Crusher Ride, that's a Magic card now. And it's not even in a Universes Beyond set. It's just in a normal standard Magic set. Every set now, they did it with Bloomborough, where there's a lot of cards in there that just were like super goofy. That felt like uncards. That set more to me had a lot of uncard feeling stuff. Here it is a combination. This set is a combination of a lot of these cards feel like uncards and a lot of these cards feel like Universes Beyond cards. Like you could easily see these in a Universes Beyond set, right? It's just like, hey, all those people that had an issue with Stranger Things, guess what? 90% of the cards in this set could easily fit in the Stranger Things category, right? Meat Hook Massacre 2. We even have cards that are now a sequel, because again, that's a horror movie thing. So let's make them again. This feels very Universes Beyond or to me. Piggy Bank. Come on, guys. How is this not an uncard? If this card was printed, I would say 5-6 years ago, it would absolutely be an uncard. Again, the goofy meme cards that, it's a piggy bank, get it? No, they're just doing that so much now. It's completely getting out of hand. I mean, this guy's an artifact creature, boar, toy. And guess what? When he dies, he makes treasure tokens. Oh, come on. Like you're just so on the nose here. This set to me is a combination of Universes Beyond, but without the IP. And a whole lot of uncards as well. Ghost Vacuum is probably the best example of this. I mean, we don't have the Ghostbusters IP, so instead we're just going to create stuff that's kind of like it, right? It's a Ghost Vacuum. Saw? I mean, they weren't screwing around with this one. It's literally named after the movies, all right, the horror movie series, which again, maybe people will like that. Sure. It's a little too on the nose, isn't it? You got a guy in a room in the Saw? Like, come on. It's from the Saw movies, right? Just a bit too on the nose for me. Again, that really is the direction they're going here, right? It's funny when the Walking Dead cards came out, there was outrage all over the place. People were freaking out about it. The Stranger Things cards, same thing. People were freaking out about how, that doesn't fit in the Magic universe at all, right? And again, I'm soft on the Universes Beyond. I don't hate it. I just made a video about, hey, here's a bunch of great cards that are from Universes Beyond that you might want to play. But we've gotten to the point now where we are getting so much Universes Beyond. And again, I think I made a video last year talking about how we're almost getting more Universes Beyond content than we're getting regular Magic content. I think last year we did. Now they've gone even a step further where the actual Magic content, the just normal old standard Magic sets are kind of just becoming Universes Beyond. Again, we shoehorn a few uncards in there as well, because we all know how big of a fan Mark Rosewater is of uncards. We're shoehorning those in there, and we've made uncards into black bordered cards as well, so you would never be able to tell the difference anyway. Every set now has a few cards that I would consider to be uncards that are just very memey and super on the nose, but then also we're moving more and more into the Universes Beyond direction where it's almost like every set is kind of Universes Beyond. Again, Outlaws of Thunder Junction, the Clue set, and all that. It sort of all feels very Universes Beyond now, where even if we're not doing a Universes Beyond set, we're doing a very obvious IP, that we don't actually have the IP, but it's just super on the nose and everyone knows what you're talking about. And I know that it is not for everyone, right? I hear that comment all the time. Oh, this set is, Bloomburrow was for, people who like cuddly animals. It's for younger players. It's for newer players, right? This set is for people who like horror movies, I guess. I remember when Magic sets were just for everybody. Can't we do that? I started playing in Tempest, and Tempest was... Who was that for? It was for Magic players. It wasn't for a specific group of people. It was just for everyone who likes the game of Magic. And then Urza Block, and then, Invasion, Odyssey, Onslaught, just throw it. What were those sets for? Were they for a specific group of people? No, they were just for everybody, right? Every set was for everybody. That's how Magic worked. Now it just seems like every set is only for a specific group of people. Why should I be a fan of that? Why should I be a fan of Magic only making sets that are for a specific group of people? And people are just going, I'm going to pass on this one. This very specific aesthetic is not for me, so I'm just going to pass on that one. Why, as a guy who's been playing Magic for almost 30 years, supposed to be a fan of Magic the Gathering making sets that are only for a specific group of people? I mean, honestly, I haven't loved really any set this year. Didn't love the Clue theme. Didn't love the Cowboy theme. Didn't really love the cute cuddly animals theme. Wasn't really for me. Don't really love the theme of this set as well. So now we've come out with 4 sets this year with very specific aesthetics, and I don't like any of them. So who are these sets for? They're for specific people, but who cares about all the people that are playing Magic, right? Again, I'm going to hear the comments of, we're trying to get more people into playing Magic. What about the people that are already playing it? Don't care about them? We don't care about our existing customers? We only care about getting new ones? Oh, don't love that. Just saying, if you like this set, that's fine. I will likely be buying 0 cards from this set. I might buy that one board wipe. It's a pretty good board wipe in my Lulu deck, obviously. But yeah, I'm definitely on the train of, I'm already not making spoiler videos because I don't love talking about these new cards coming out. I haven't really been excited about any of these sets this year. I bought a couple of cards from Bloomburrow. I think I have 1 Bloomburrow card currently in a deck, and I might buy 1 card from this set. Okay, so I guess all the people that like horror movies, congratulations, Magic the Gathering. You did it. You got those people to go run out and buy these cards, and then everyone else, not so much. Again, I don't understand the logic there myself. It's not for me. If you guys like this set, let me know in the comments below. If you think I'm crazy for not liking this set because it's so great, you can let me know in the comments below as well. That's it for today, though, and thanks for tuning in.